course, you know the situation we talked about with me and parole and still paying restitution.
Yeah.
It's an astronomical amount that I have to give to them in order to make sure I'm off. And we're talking a little under 250,000.
Christian is on probation from a case 10 years ago that is still affecting his life.
I went to prison behind a toxic relationship.
Really?
Never put my hands on her, right? I'm blocking the door, so I'm trying to have a conversation. It gets heated, and of course the judge had it out for me. She sent me to prison.
I knew about the restitution since day one. However, I didn't know the number. We have this extravagant wedding that is going to cost somewhere near that. It's just bad timing. So basically, there's $250,000 left. That's like $50,000 a month.
50K. But this is the reason why I want to be released from their control, because there's no hindrance on me traveling outside the country. And I would hate for that to happen a month before our wedding.
Yeah. Well, I think it is time for us to call her.
You got the link?
Hello everyone, this is the Mind of Lilith, and thank you for joining me today for another celebrity chart analysis. Today's subject will be a beautiful reality TV star and entrepreneur named Jennifer Williams, who first became famous on the reality TV show Basketball Wives. I decided to take a look at Jennifer's chart today after watching her talk to her fiance about his $250,000 restitution, which he has to pay for a DV conviction. And in the clip that I saw, he stated that he can't get married to her until this restitution is paid off. And so he was kind of sort of looking at her like wanting her to offer to pay, which is a huge red flag to anybody who doesn't have Neptune square Venus or Neptune afflicting their sun or ascendant. Now, prior to this scene, I remember Jennifer dating Tim Norman of Sweetie Pies, who was convicted in, I think, 2022 to a life sentence for having his nephew killed for a six-figure insurance payout, right? So Tim and Jennifer dated for a little while, and I think he broke up with her. Prior to that relationship, because I don't really watch Basketball Wives, and I haven't for quite a while, I remember watching Jennifer's ex-husband, Eric Williams, throw a drink in her face, and they ended up getting a divorce after only 3 years of marriage. I think she won a divorce payout of like $6 million plus several properties. And I'm not sure if he was happy about that. I don't think he was. On the same show, Basketball Wives, I do remember her frenemy, Evelyn Lozada, jumping on a table to attack her. So why does Jennifer trigger so many people? Why does she keep falling for these toxic men? Like, she seems so above it all, so chill, unproblematic, cool, level-headed, chill, right? Compared to other reality stars. Like Megan Good, I suspected that there was a Neptune affliction in her chart, and that Neptune placement is responsible, or partially responsible, for her making these unwise decisions, and, I was correct about it. So, according to the internet, Jennifer Williams was born on September 17th, 1974 in Orange, New Jersey. I don't have her time of birth, so I don't have her ascendant sign. She's a Virgo sun, just like Megan Good, and she has a Venus in Virgo, just like Megan Good. For Jennifer, Venus makes a square aspect to Neptune in Sagittarius, and it opposes Jupiter in domicile in Pisces. And under normal circumstances, I would say that a very strong Jupiter opposing Venus mitigates its debilitation in Virgo. But now we have Neptune here making a T-square with Jupiter and Venus, so this kind of compounds the challenges of having a delusional Venus in Virgo. So Jennifer also has a very significant stellium of planets in the sign of Libra, including Mars and Pluto, which are in conjunction. Pluto is conjunct the moon in Libra, the moon is conjunct Mercury in Libra, and Mercury is conjunct Uranus, which is the Atma Karaka, or the highest degree of her overall chart. Furthermore, Jennifer has Saturn in Cancer and debilitation square the moon in Libra, and this causes another affliction. People with afflicted moons tend to have a bad relationship with their own feelings because of their mother. We can also see that Jennifer has Chiron in Aries opposing her Libra moon. Jennifer's moon is afflicted by several celestial bodies. Saturn in Cancer, which is debilitated, Pluto in Libra, Chiron in Aries, and even Mars in Libra is afflicting the moon. Mars and the moon are enemies. I would even say that Jennifer's moon is being afflicted by Uranus as well, because Uranus moon aspects exacerbate emotional instability. But Jennifer's saving grace is the fact that Saturn is coming to the rescue. And Saturn in Cancer is making a square aspect to Uranus. And this is putting the reins on this planet, which is why Jennifer appears to be relatively emotionally stable or balanced. In spite of her questionable choices in men, we don't see her out here acting crazy. She runs several successful businesses, and I will only caution that she stays away from drugs and alcohol because she has an addictive personality. With the Virgo sun, Jupiter opposing her sun, and Jupiter's in domicile, and there's a square to Neptune. She has to stay away from drugs and alcohol because she can easily become addicted to those experiences. So let me first discuss Pluto. In astrology, Pluto represents transformations, crises, secrets, life and death situations, and the death of the ego. With Pluto, we have to ask ourselves, what are we willing to sacrifice to get what we value the most? Or what are we willing to sacrifice to keep what we value the most? Sometimes it's who are we willing to sacrifice? As we saw with Diddy, who or what are we willing to sacrifice to get what we want the most, right? For Jennifer in Generation X, which is 1971-72 to 1983, Pluto is in a sign of Libra, which represents relationships, harmony, balance, diplomacy, marriage, merging, etc. When we enter relationships with people, whether they're personal, professional, or platonic, that relationship becomes an entity in and of itself. And when we come together, we create opportunities to learn, grow, and build with one another, ideally, because Libra rules the 7th house of open enemies. So you can meet somebody who destroys your life or who helps you to build, right? It can go either way. So when someone has a lot of Libra energy in their chart, whether they have a stellium of planets in the 7th house or planets in the sign of Libra, they are drawn to the idea of losing themselves in a partnership which in their mind represents something greater than who they are individually. That entity that I talked about earlier, it means something more than who they are by themselves. And sometimes this can cause the Libra person or someone with a lot of planets in their 7th house to overextend themselves to make their partners happy, to maintain that relationship, especially if their partners are greedy, selfish, inconsiderate, or otherwise damaged. They feel like they have to counterbalance their partner's energy by overextending themselves or giving too much. And this can also be the reverse. The Libra can be the black hole of selfishness and narcissism because Librans have Scorpio in their 2nd house of values. So some Librans may use sexuality and manipulation to gain control over their partners. All right. Pluto and Libra natives are willing to sacrifice their individual needs to protect a relationship that they value more than themselves. The polarity point for Libra is Aries, the individual, the leader, the person who's by themselves. When you deal with the opposite sign of Libra, they are concerned about forging or cultivating partnerships and relationships that may elevate them in society. So a lot of Librans or someone with strong Venus 7th house signatures, they are willing to sacrifice their needs to protect a relationship that they value more than themselves. Or on the other extreme end, they expect their partner to make all of these sacrifices while they do whatever they want. Aries. And this could be true, especially if the person has Pluto conjunct the North Node, Pluto conjunct the Sun in Libra, Pluto in the 1st house, Libra, stuff like that. Now, Pluto and Mars for Jennifer is in the same sign in the 2nd house from the Sun, right? Jennifer's Sun is in Virgo, the 2nd house from that is Libra. The 2nd house is the house of material things, values, resources, and how we take care of the things that we value. Jennifer is obsessed with being in relationships because they give her the validation that her beauty and wealth cannot. I think Jennifer's worth something like $40 million. She's not broke. But the danger is that with Pluto, these relationships can become very toxic and dysfunctional to the point where Jennifer often has to choose between her dignity which is what she should value, right? Her self-respect and maintaining the relationship, hence the ego death of Pluto. So Mars conjunct Pluto can be quite dangerous for a woman because this makes men possessive of the woman or her resources to the point where they're willing to inflict violence, right? We saw this with her ex-husband on the woman to put her back in her place or keep the woman in line. These men could also use money to control their women, right? And I think Jennifer may have grown up with that dynamic in her household as a child. I don't think it's a coincidence that Jennifer dated somebody who would kill their own family for money. That is Mars conjunct Pluto, okay? Pluto rules the sign of Scorpio, and this deals with insurance payments, other people's resources, intimacy, betrayal, right? So she was dating a man who had the potential to inflict harm on somebody for money. She attracted him to her, and she was attracted to him. And now the guy she's currently dating has a DV case. So she's attracted to violent men who lose their tempers if they don't have control over a woman or control over somebody's resources. So that's why I mentioned the Mars-Pluto conjunction can be very attractive for a woman. Like, she is very desirable for men. She's sexy and attractive. It's two different things. When you're sexy but not attractive, or attractive but not sexy. But she's both. So these men see her as a prize or a trophy, and that validates her. But that also scares her because when a man sees you as his prize or his trophy, he wants to take control over your life. He feels like he has control over you, or he's entitled to do certain things with you or your resources because now you belong to him. And that triggers the hell out of her. Mars making an aspect to Pluto in the square, conjunction, or opposition is like being somebody's trophy wife, a woman who has no identity of her own outside of being whatever the man wants her to be because of how she looks. And again, I'm thinking about her mother. Her mother may have experienced this in her own marriage, right? But on the flip side, in spite of her beauty and like her ditzy, personality and her demure, laid-back behavior, Jennifer is really masculine when it comes to her money and her business, okay? She has a killer instinct for making money or taking somebody else's money. But unfortunately, this energy can flip the other way. She may attract men who want her for her money too. So because Mars and Pluto are in Jennifer's second house of money, valuable resources, tangible assets, things that you own, she may attract men who not only want her for her body, but also for her money. And these men are sharks who can smell her desperation or who can smell her codependency issues. Now, Jennifer may try to hide this aspect of her personality, but you can't hide Pluto because whatever you can't see or hear, whatever you're hiding, you can feel it. It's like an aura. So Jennifer is attracting Plutonian men who are ruthless, competitive, controlling, dangerous, or even greedy for money and resources, aka Tim Norman, right? That is a prime example of Mars and Pluto. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Tim has a Cancer sun and a Pluto Libra. So this is Pluto squared to Sun, someone who's ruthless and determined to win. And so, it's not always bad. Pluto square suns does not mean you're always going to be a murderer. This is somebody who's really determined to be successful, and they will do whatever it takes to get to where they want to go. In Tim's case, he was willing to use violence and theft to become who he thought he was supposed to be. So these men can smell Jennifer's desperation, but she's not a dummy either. So even if these men won't harm Jennifer physically, they'll try to dominate her to get control of her resources. And the best way that a man knows how to do that is to connect with her emotionally, because the moon, Pluto, and Mars are in the same house. So if I make you believe that I love you and that you can trust me and that you're safe with me, then you'll give me your money. And that is what I think her current fiance is doing with her. But again, what these men don't know about Jennifer is that, yes, she's very romantic and she's a sucker for love, but she has no problem cutting her losses when something does not make sense. Her Sun and Venus are in Earth signs, right? Venus deals with what we value, our resources, balance, harmony, relationships, what we find attractive. So although Jennifer is quite delusional when it comes to love, she's also attracted to financial stability. She usually dates men who have something going for them. So some men may lie, Pluto in the second house, or Neptune square to Venus and the Sun. Some men may lie and pretend to be something that they're not to get close to her, and she has to be aware of that also. Venus square Neptune natives are not only susceptible to delusion, but also to deception, because you're only seeing what you want to see. And it's easy for you to fall for the okie doke because somebody says the right things, they present themselves a certain way, very superficial type dynamic. If you look rich, then you must be rich. And a lot of men out here are scamming these days. So I wouldn't be surprised if this guy that she's currently engaged to is a scammer who's lying to her to get close to her. And then once they think she has her guard down, they will sink their Plutonian Martian fangs in her neck and try to take her resources. Jennifer also has a stellium in air signs, which is logic and objectivity. So how is a person who is so idealistic and romantic and delusional also not a sucker when it comes to her money? Well, Jennifer's parents, especially her mother, taught her a lot of valuable lessons about self-sufficiency. This is the moon conjunct Pluto and the moon square Saturn, right? Moon, Pluto natives, whether it's a square, conjunction, opposition, or moon in Scorpio, moon in the 8th house, they're petrified of being emotionally dependent on anyone, which is complicated for Jennifer because her moon is in Libra, which is about relationships. So it's not easy to play Jennifer for a fool because she has a debilitated Saturn in Cancer, square her moon in Libra. She can cut a man off emotionally with the quickness if he's messing with her money or her emotional security. And why is it so easy for her? It's easy because she subconsciously chooses men who are deeply flawed. So she could never truly be in love with these men in the first place because they're severely damaged or dysfunctional. In actuality, because she's so self-sufficient, these men who are damaged can't really do much for her. They're just a means to an end, either financially, emotionally, or socially. Now, I have not forgotten the Venus, Neptune, Jupiter T-square, which, like Megan Good, has Jennifer attracting broken men that she thinks she can fix. Because Virgo's love language is acts of service. On the one hand, Jennifer likes to be needed, but on the other hand, she doesn't like to be dependent on like a crutch because that requires a level of vulnerability and trust that she's not really comfortable with giving. Jennifer may have learned from her mother the dangers of being financially or emotionally dependent on a man. So with the moon and Pluto in Libra, Jennifer likes the idea of a romantic relationship in theory. But Uranus is also in Libra, close to the moon and Mercury. She doesn't really want a traditional relationship in practice. In theory, it sounds good because that's the way things are supposed to be, right? Man and woman get married, traditional life, traditional wife. But she's subconsciously afraid of falling in love with anyone because of the dynamic between her parent. Moon square Saturn aspects usually indicate a physical, emotional, or psychological separation between the parents, which makes it difficult for the mother to truly bond with and nurture her child in an affirming way because she's in distress herself. If the mother's in distress and she's angry and she's afraid and she's bitter, then she's going to pass down those feelings to her child, whether she knows it or not. So in astrology, the moon represents the mother, and Jennifer's moon's afflicted. So we have Mars in close aspect with the moon, Pluto in close aspect with the moon, Saturn making a square with the moon, Chiron in opposition with the moon. I don't know for sure, and I hope I'm wrong about this, but Jennifer's mother may have been in emotional or mental distress, okay? And she may have repressed her emotions to the point where she became tormented. There may have been a lot of secret pain and anger in her heart that Jennifer felt, even if her mother kept these feelings to herself, and she may have, but it comes out in other ways, right? So from her mother, Jennifer may have learned not to be vulnerable with people or fully trust or depend on them. And with the moon in Libra, Jennifer's mother may have sacrificed her own needs for the sake of her children or for Jennifer's father. This is like the old school wives who would go through emotional, psychological, or physical abuse and keep quiet because they want to keep up appearances in society, right? Whatever happens in the house stays in the house. Libra, this is social validation. Or they don't want to break up the family because they're dependent on the father financially. So they'll endure a lot of abuse, disrespect, neglect. Abuse isn't always physical. It could be, emotional neglect. It could be having affairs, all this other stuff. So with Pluto conjunct the moon and Mars conjunct the moon and Saturn square the moon, Jennifer's mother's feelings transfer to her whether she wanted them to or not. If you guys remember what I said about Pluto earlier, if you can't see it or hear it, you will definitely feel the tension. You'll feel the intensity or you'll feel the danger in the air. it's like a dark shadow or dark cloud. That's Pluto, right? Psychological torment that you can't really rationalize or pinpoint objectively. You just feel like something's off. And that is akin to the energy of Scorpio. So with the moon in Libra, there's a need for relationships that can become codependent. And with Pluto being in Libra as well, Jennifer's mother may have sacrificed a significant aspect of her identity and her happiness and her emotional peace for her father. She could have sacrificed her mental health as well. And I believe the Mars being here as well, Jennifer's mother was very angry about that. And I think Jennifer internalized her mother's anger. And that gives her that sort of callousness and killer instinct for business and self-sufficiency and not trusting men 100% totally. Like, I'll date you, I'll sleep with you, I'll fall in love with you, sort of, kind of, I'll make nice with you. But on a deep core level, I don't really trust you like that because I watched my mother go through trauma and torment and unhappiness at the hands of my father, who may have been a provider, but he didn't take care of her emotionally. And so, I think Jennifer's mother internalized a lot of her anger and grief, and it could have manifested into like depression or psychological issues at some point in her life. I'm not saying this happened for sure, but Jennifer talks very highly about her parents, but the chart is what it is. Like, the mother is surrounded by malefic. The mother is being afflicted by Chiron, Saturn, Pluto, and Mars. So whatever Jennifer is saying about, her childhood, I'm sure she grew up in a really stable household financially, but that doesn't mean that emotionally her needs were being met. So I think Jennifer's mother's sacrifice or the way she was being treated in her marriage could have made her angry, or she could have been a victim of emotional abuse or neglect, which again, she could have repressed or endured for the sake of the stability of the family. This is Libra. Again, the marriage and the family unit becomes an entity in and of itself that I have to protect because I value that more than my own identity. And this is one of the reasons why a lot of boomer women divorced their husbands and they told their Gen X daughters to get your money, get a job, take care of your finances, because you don't want to be beholden to a man who's taking care of you financially, but he's cheating on you, mistreating you, ignoring you, neglecting you, could be low-key gay. All this stuff is a possibility. So she's a product of that generation where economic opportunities were opening up to women for the first time, and she took advantage of that. She's worth $40 million, but she has no husband. So she sacrificed a husband, a traditional partner, for her financial security. And I think her mother's pain kind of shifted her in that direction. A lot of Gen X women go through that. Anyway. So, I think Jennifer's mom repressed her feelings, and we can see the repression with the Saturn in Cancer, which is debilitated. Square aspect to the moon, Mercury, Mars even to an extent, and Uranus. Mars square Saturn is basically breaking tradition. So Jennifer could have come from a long line of women who traditionally were at the mercy of their husbands or who were dependent on a man for provision and protection. And with Saturn square Uranus and Libra, she's breaking that tradition in a way. She's now able to take care of herself or even her own children if she wants children, right? Without the help of a man. So Saturn represents blocks, limitations, harsh lessons, responsibilities, obligations, the father. And Cancer represents emotions, nurturing the family, provision, children, and the mother. Jennifer's father was very traditional. He was stern, but not the most nurturing type. He may have been a hard man who put a lot of pressure on himself to take care of his family at the expense of being emotionally available to his wife. I'm not saying this is the case for sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's the reason why Jennifer's mom may have felt oppressed in that environment. She could have suffered in an environment where the man was paying the bills, but there was no warmth. There was no romance. There was no happiness, no joy. It's just bills, money, I gotta work. There could have been emotional, mental, or physical distance between the two people, okay? Between the father and the mother. So whether Jennifer's mom communicated that to her or not, it did not matter because she felt what her mother was going through, as all children can feel what their mother's going through, whether she says anything or not. So Pluto-Moon connections, because Jennifer has Pluto conjunct the Moon, sometimes translates into the child taking care of the mother emotionally or being the mother's emotional therapist. Also can become the mother living vicariously through her child. So on some level, I think Jennifer may have felt responsible for her mother, rest in peace to her, who could have suffered from depression or mental illness because of repressed emotions and stress. Mental illness doesn't always mean bipolar or schizophrenic. It could just be depression and anxiety, right? So I know Jennifer has always spoken highly of her parents, which is great. And I think they were good providers for her financially. But you can see how a person was raised based on the people who they get involved with in relationships. Like Beyonce chose someone who was like her father, right? A manager, someone who's a boss. Looks were important. This man is a boss. He is a mogul. He knows how to make moves in business. He's about his business. So you can see the quality of a person's upbringing based on the type of people that they bring into their life. Especially someone in Jennifer's situation who does not have to date the type of men that she does. Like she's dating, I don't want to say bums, but men of questionable character. Men who may be abusive or manipulative or dysfunctional to some extent. So I would not be surprised if at some level with the Chiron in Aries opposing the moon in Libra, Jennifer could have felt responsible for her mother's pain, especially if her mother made sacrifices or sacrificed her own happiness to keep the family together for her sake, right? So now let's get into the mutable T-square really quickly because I don't want to do this all day. Okay. Actually, I do want to, but I can't. I got bills to pay. So Jennifer, like many people with Venus and Virgo, including Jada Pinkett, is attracted to people who need to be fixed, which is one of the reasons why a lot of them become promiscuous or even sexual healers, aka sex workers. Jennifer appears to be attracted to men who are very flawed or unattractive because, number one, they are very easy to impress. We can see she has low self-esteem based on who she's choosing and what I talked about in her chart. And she's also attracted to these types of men because they're easy to break up with since they're not on her level in the first place. So Venus square, conjunct, or opposite Neptune natives sabotage relationships with their unrealistic expectations. This is like marrying a man who's a broke felon and expecting him to become this ambitious, hardworking, generous entrepreneur because of the power of your vagina and your relationship. It does not work like that. So Jennifer's Jupiter-Venus opposition brings a lot of attention from the opposite sex, which I believe she takes for granted. I don't think she wants marriage or commitment because that requires trust, responsibility, and some level of interdependence. She wants the freedom to experience different relationships, and so she likes the new car smell of a relationship. This is the stellium in Libra as well, in love with the idea of love. But when things get too real, Pluto, her personality changes, and that fear of being trapped or abused, it triggers her. And so she leaves the relationship or she sabotages it in some way. The men leave her for whatever reason. So Jennifer does not want marriage or commitment, in my opinion. I think that a lot of men confuse her sweetness and her charm and her like laid back, chill in the cut, beautiful exterior, this like Neptunian aura, kind of like a siren or a femme fatale. They mistake this charming, beautiful, model-esque looking woman as a dummy, and she's not that. Her mother taught her not to ever rely on a man, period. That's what I believe from what I've been seeing in her chart. So yeah, Jennifer is about her coins because she saw what happened to her mother, who more than likely was in a codependent relationship with her father. So I don't know if Jennifer's mother worked or anything. I'm not sure, but yeah, her father could have worked and she could have been stuck in that marriage because he was paying all the bills. So with the stellium in the second house, Jennifer may also be selfish or very materialistic because for her, money is power. And if she has her own money, then she doesn't have to stay in an unfulfilling, broken relationship. Venus squared Neptune and Jupiter can also be very superficial. If you guys remember, I said that Neptune's a beauty filter. Everything looks rosy from the outside looking in. This is the new car smell of a relationship, the courting stages, when things aren't too serious. Jupiter makes Jennifer very optimistic that she'll always be able to find a man because she's very pretty and she has her own coin. But with Saturn and Pisces, until next year, she's going to have to come to terms with the realities of age, time, financial restrictions. Something's going to make her more aware of the fact that she has to be more serious about who she chooses as a partner. I think she's turning 50 this year. So once she turns 50, her mind may shift about her desirability in love, and she may become more serious when it comes to picking a partner. She's making like high school choices when it comes to relationships. She's going backwards. And I think she's making these high school choices because she assumes that because she's beautiful and successful, she'll always be able to find a man, and she always will. But that don't mean the man's going to be good for her, right? Tim Norman, like, what are we doing with that? Even the current guy she's dating now, like, what's going on with that situation? This guy has a DV charge and $250,000 in restitution he has to pay, and he's kind of looking at her to pay for it, and he looks much younger than her. Like, just because you have lots of options, Venus opposite Jupiter, doesn't mean those options are of quality. And so with the stellium in Libra and Venus square Neptune and Venus opposite Jupiter, Jennifer may have a quantity over quality mentality when it comes to relationships because she doesn't really want commitment anyway. So to be honest, she doesn't have to settle down with anybody. She can keep dating forever. At this pace, she still looks good. She has tons of money. She doesn't need a man for anything. So I think that subconsciously is her plan. With Pluto and Libra, she may feel like drawn to relationships and she may feel like she needs to be with someone, but subconsciously she doesn't want to need anybody. And so she attracts men who don't have staying power. She'd be a plumb fool to marry this guy. And I think that with Saturn now in Pisces, opposing her sun sign, conjunct Jupiter and square Neptune, she's going to have to wake up and smell the roses. I think she may do that within the next year. If she marries this guy, that's going to be a real bad mistake for her. I think Saturn is like looking out for her. Like, yo, you may want to marry this guy, but I'm going to show you over the next year, year and a half, why you should not do this. Saturn gets a bad rap for like blocking things or blocking our blessings and, making us see the really gnarly, realistic aspects of life. It's not a fun planet. But Saturn does save us from making really poor decisions in relationships and business when it comes to finances. It forces us to be responsible and to look at things realistically, not the way we want them to be, but the way they are. So I think Saturn saved Jennifer from Tim Norman. And I think the Saturn in Pisces transit is like taking the rose-tinted glasses off of her relationship with this guy here. Because now you're asking for money to pay off your debts. That's not the dynamic she's used to. Like, no. So, yeah. Back to the chart. Let me see what else. Neptune and Jupiter are both planets of escapism. And Jennifer dates men who cannot give her what she needs. Period. Whether it's emotionally or financially or physically. She's doing that on purpose to avoid losing herself in a deeper commitment. And she thinks she can sprinkle this fairy dust on these broken men and they'll miraculously become everything she wants, which gives her control over them because she does have Mars conjunct Pluto and Mars conjunct the moon and Pluto conjunct the moon. So she is a control freak too. It's not just men trying to control her. She's also trying to control the men she's dating. And it's easy to control a broke down, unattractive ex-con than it is to control someone who doesn't really need her either, right? Someone on her level. So she dates below her level on purpose because that's where she feels like she has the most power in that relationship. So yeah, she thinks that these men will become everything she wants, but she doesn't even know what she wants. She's confused because on the one hand, she wants a marriage to validate her identity, Pluto and Libra, but on the other hand, she's afraid of losing herself in a relationship because she associates emotional interdependence with her mother's trauma as an unhappy and unfulfilled wife. She has the financial independence that makes her feel strong, powerful, valuable, in charge, and everything, and even safe. But she wants to share that experience with somebody, with the Libra stellium. But unfortunately, the types of men that she is attracting are the types who will force her to choose between them and her security or her money, which again is the source of her security. So I don't see her giving her money to any man. If she does do that, she's going to resent him for even asking her because she wasn't raised like that. She could have been raised in a traditional household, Saturn in Cancer. And so I think that she feels like giving a man money is giving her power away. And it is, in a sense, it is, So again, she's not worth $40 million for nothing. She has excellent business acumen, but she needs to date a man like 15 to 20 years older than her maybe. A professional accountant, a lawyer or executive, someone like Kelly Rowland's husband. The Neptune in Pisces transit, which is opposing her sun sign and her Venus and squaring her Neptune and conjunct her Jupiter, has her in this delusional relationship with someone who she knows is not compatible with her. She knows this. And, a part of her charm is the fact that she can sell a fantasy. We have Venus, Neptune, and Jupiter in a T-square. She can sell the fantasy of being like the perfect wife and this this vixen, this beautiful, feminine, etheric, independent, strong, powerful woman. But, and it's not funny. But what happens is, once these men see that she's really about her business and she's not a pushover, when it comes to her money, that's the issue. They get triggered and they try to, take their power back by attacking her. I don't know why Tim and Jennifer broke up, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was over money. Like, Tim was borrowing money or taking money from his mother. He was willing to kill his nephew for money. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point he asked Jennifer for money and she said no. I'm not saying it's true or not, but I don't know why he broke up with her. It was a blessing though. Rejection is God's protection. So I can go on and on about this, but I'm gonna leave it here. If you want to order a personal reading from me, the link is in the description box. Thank you for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I will speak to you soon.